What are surplus funds? Surplus funds are the excess proceeds from a foreclosure sale after all the debts, including the mortgage, have been paid. Okay, so it's basically the overpayment at the auction. So if a property sells for 200,000, but the mortgage that was owed on that property is 150, the excess part is going to be 50,000. And so when a property goes to foreclosure, essentially the bank wants what's owed to them, right? Whatever lender's foreclosing, it could be the first loan, it could be the second loan. Ultimately, the bank puts a value on the property, and the value that they put is whatever's owed to them. So even if it's a $500,000 property, if the bank's owed 100,000, that's what it's valued at for the bank. So that's where they usually start the opening bid. Then you have all these investors, cash buyers. They come to these auctions, these public auctions, and they start to bid, right? They start to make bids, and then it becomes a little bit of a bidding war. And we like the bidding wars. You and I, we like that because that's what drives up the surplus. Okay. So eventually it sells to the highest bidder. And then the law mandates that the surplus funds, the excess amount, right, minus all debt, that amount gets paid back to the homeowner, right? Now, in a way, that's kind of like their newfound equity, right? So what most homeowners and most people actually think is, if I lose my house, that's it. That's the end of my life as a property owner, and everything's gone, right? It's the saddest day ever. But foreclosure doesn't have to be the end. So what I always say is, this is their newfound equity that they thought they lost, right? And so what I really like about this business, guys, is like we're in the business of helping people reclaim or save what's rightfully owed to them. And when I mean save, I mean that if they don't do anything about this, that the funds get paid to the government, they get forfeited to the government. That process is called escheatment, and I put that in the playbook that I'll share with you guys at the end. Escheatment is the process of a government entity basically taking possession of your assets, and so we help those situations. We help prevent those situations, whether it be the homeowner or whether it be the heirs of the homeowner. We come in, we handle the legal process, and we essentially help these homeowners save what's rightfully owed to them. And what does that mean to us? What that means to us is, over the years, it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of mid 8 figures is what I've recovered for my clients, and I've made some a good fee, a nice fee on that, a handsome fee. So what does that mean to us? So every $100,000 that we recover for a homeowner, we're making anywhere from 15 to 30% of that. So do the math on that. Let's say you're able to recover, a million in a year. You're able to recover 4 million in a year, 5 million, or our best year, we recovered 15 million in 1 year. And we were charging anywhere from about 15 to 30% of that. So that's huge. And I like to kind of compare it to like if any of you guys wholesale, or the opportunity that exists in wholesaling, this is like an assignment fee, but in many cases, they're much bigger than assignment fees. Now, how do you identify surplus funds? There's a few different places where you can actually find these types of leads. And it's essentially anywhere auction data exists. So you can find auction data on county records, right? So you can single out a handful of properties, look those properties up. If they've gone through foreclosure or they're about to go through foreclosure, you can look those properties. This is the manual way of doing it. So if you're, potentially, let's say you're on a budget, or you're just not interested in spending a lot of money on this as a side hustle, you can do it this way. A lot of people do it this way. You can even pull lists from some county records that will actually allow you to pull lists. You can call some of these county clerks and basically request for these lists. And then you can access this from like software like PropStream, where you can track NODs, which is notice of defaults, or NTSs, notice of trustee sales. So here's essentially how you're going to evaluate. Once you have the data, you're gonna. So a good rule of thumb when you're looking at a glance, if you're looking at a deal and you're thinking, okay, is this deal going to have surplus? Basically, you're looking at the property value versus what the mortgage balance is. So if the property value is 500,000, the mortgage balance is like 50,000, you know with a pretty high level of certainty that this property, if it goes to auction, it's going to sell for more than 50 grand. Therefore, it's going to create a surplus. Now, there's further verification though when you're looking at a property that you think could have surplus, because you also have to keep in mind that there's liens, right? There could be judgment liens, there could be property tax liens that are outstanding, child support liens, mechanics liens. And so you do have to take the additional step in making sure that you scrub all the debt that could be recorded against that property. Okay. A good way, yeah, you guys can use your own tracking systems. There's a lot of free ways to track this. Trello. You can use Zoho has a free CRM that you can use to track some of your leads and all the data within the leads. You can use spreadsheets if that's what you want to do. The choice is yours on that. Now, let's get into the good stuff, the sales process. Okay, so there's different ways that you can reach out to these leads once you identify that they have surplus. Whether you do that through the county records, whether you do that through Retran. Once you identify they have surplus, you can send direct mail, which I know some of my competitors do this. Personally, I don't do direct mail, and it's not because I don't think it works. It's just because I didn't feel the need to. Maybe I'll do it down the line. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just stick to what I know works best for me. Now, there's Johnny talked about door knocking. So because we're going to be focusing on California deals only, there is opportunities for you guys to actually go to these doors just like you would any other potential deal and actually earn business that way. Because a lot of these people, just like any other service that you might offer, or if you're looking to, represent a seller or looking to purchase a property, a lot of people don't answer their phones, especially elderly people, right? There's a lot of elderly people that unfortunately go through these tough times and they foreclose on their properties, or there's properties that have deceased homeowners where the property might be abandoned. There might be a family member in there that's not taking care of the property. So it's a good idea if you're local to a pretty substantial deal to actually door knock. But let's go into the sales process really quick, okay? So can you guys all see this here? The sales process?
Yes, I can see it.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I'm going to go into the script after this, but here's the general sales process. And again, guys, I'm going to keep this pretty high level. And then on series 2, 3, or 4, we can go into more detail. I know I have an hour, so I'll try to utilize as much as possible. Excuse me. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do, you're going to call the prospect with the designated script, which I'm going to show you guys here in a second. You're going to secure a verbal agreement, okay, to move forward with claiming the surplus funds and signing the consent forms with a notary. All of our deals have to be done with a notary. And it's the simple fact is that when I first started this business in 2013, we were able to do DocuSign, but there was a few bad actors that ruined it for everybody. So now all deals have to be signed with wet signatures, and they have to be notarized. Once an appointment has been accepted, the file is forwarded to the legal team for quality control. So this is the part where we collaborate on, right? So Johnny might go into further detail on that, but what the Anexa group is what our job is to support the legal side of your deal, right? So you take care of identifying the lead, selling the lead, and then we come in, we take over the legal aspect of your deal, get it signed, get it processed, get it to the finish line. Okay. Once the deal is notarized and the contract is received, the deal gets sent over to one of our case managers that will actually email the client with a welcome email. They'll highlight all the timelines, expectations, request any missing conditions or documents. Kind of like when you open title, our legal team, the attorneys, the paralegals are going to be in touch with your client every step of the way. They're going to be asking for the conditions, asking for the documents, and essentially handling that side of the deal so you don't have to, so you can focus on getting more deals. Now, the only time we'll ask for your help in this process is if your client goes MIA. Okay. Other than that, we don't want to take you away from the field. We don't want to take you away from the phones. We want to treat this like any other deal where you submit a deal to title, escrow, and they handle everything, from A to Z. Now, the documents that your client will need to sign, these are the pretty much the standard documents. So there'll be a letter of authorization that essentially allows us to represent your client legally, and we attach an attorney to all of our deals, and that basically gives us the ammo, the credibility, the respect, and the legal capacity to be able to represent those clients in a court of law, represent those clients to the other attorneys that are involved in the claims process. Okay. Throughout that process, we're following civil code in California, making sure that we're doing everything according to the state statute, and then getting it again to the finish line. These are additional documents that could be needed, and I'll go into more detail on that here in just a second. So, script. This is the part where we might spend the most time on, okay? But I'm going to give you more concept, and then I imagine the later trainings will probably go into role playing. We're not going to do that today, but I just want you guys to really understand how our script works. So the way I've created the script for my team, and this is what's worked for us. Okay. So you guys are welcome to, format it in a way that is easier digestible for you, or easily digestible for you. But this is what works for us. We set it up in a workflow format. So this way it's easy for us, and it's not super long. It's literally just under 3 pages. I've attached some links here, but
Alfred,
I will go through it. Yeah.
Alfred, quick question. How long
Sure.
have you been doing this script, and how much money have you got from this script? Ballpark.
So no, that's a good question. So, I would say, so my first year doing this business, we recovered about 10 million in surplus. Every year after that, we recovered anywhere from 12 to 15 million in surplus, and we're making anywhere from 15 to 30% of that. Last few years, we since there's been regulation and competition in the space, so we've done just about under 5 million in the last couple of years. So using
the script, right?
Using the script.
Okay, so that goes like, if you want to reinvent the wheel, good luck with that. But
Yeah.
Don't get caught up on trying to reinvent the script. If he's made millions of it, stick with it. Just an FYI, guys.
You've made 5 million, or
So
you
we've
recovered
claimed
5 million?
Yeah, we recovered
what
5
is
million
the
in the last
net?
couple of years.
Oh, 30% of that, correct?
So so when we first started this business from 2013 to about 2018, we were getting close to about 25 to 35% of the total revenue, right? Now, as regulation increased, just like any other business, and then competition increased, we started having to compete more. And, there was people probably working this business out of their mom's basement who can do a file for $500. And so we're having to compete with big firms, law firms, and then also the guys working out of their basement. So we've had to kind of come to a point where we don't need to compete with the guy working out of the basement, because we have way more to offer. But it's gotten to the point where now our average deal is probably in the neighborhood about 15 to 20%. So take whatever I've recovered, and then 15 to 20% of that is what we make in fees.
It's
Okay.
got about $1 million.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good, Alfred.
It's not too bad. Like I said,
agree.
the surplus business has been very, very good to me. Everything I've done in the last 11 years has been funded by this business. My family has been taken care of by this business, and it's all a variation of this script. Obviously, I've iterated the script over the years, right? Just to evolve with the times. And in fact, this final edition of the script that you're seeing today is, I would say, is our strongest by far, because it's using a lot of modern techniques. It might be a little uncomfortable to you guys if you're not familiar with this style of selling, because most 99% of salespeople are not good at selling. Just to be quite frank, most people are going to call, they're going to say, they're going to call Sean and be like, "Hi, Sean, my name is Alfred Taren from ABC Company, and the reason I'm calling you today is," right? That's the introduction that 99% of salespeople have. And automatically, what that does to the prospect, to the person on the other end of the phone, is it brings up their defenses, right? It brings up their guard. And now all of a sudden, there's some huge sales resistance that you have to overcome. You ever notice this on your calls? And it's happened to me too, where I'll ask a question to the prospect and I'll get very, very surface level answers, right? I won't get any in-depth answers. I won't get them to open up to me emotionally. And that's what we want, right? So people buy with emotion. They don't buy when they're analyzing. They buy when they're emotionally involved in that process with you. So that's what this is designed to do. And I'll go through it. So the initial line opener, as soon as the prospect answers the phone, it's, "Hi, Johnny. It's just Alfred here." Okay. Why do I say that? It's just Alfred here because if I'm calling somebody out the blue and I say, "Hey," if I'm calling my best friend and I lost my phone and I'm using someone else's phone and I'm like, "Hey, it's just Alfred," they're thinking automatically, okay, I must know this person first and foremost, right? And the following question is, I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a quick moment. Okay. Now, why am I doing this? So I'm using neutral languaging in this process because most salespeople are going to use absolute language, right? Most salespeople are going to call and say, "The reason I'm calling you is because I can absolutely offer you the best product you've ever seen in the entire world," right? They're going to speak in absolutes, and we're going to speak in neutral languaging, right? And what that's going to do is that's going to lower resistance. So if I'm calling you and I'm saying, "Hey, could you possibly help me out for a quick moment?" You're thinking, "Who is this? And maybe how can I help you?" Right? And the next line is, "Well, I'm not sure you could yet. So I don't know if you could actually even help me yet. But I was looking at your property records at 123 Main Street. Did you own that property?" I'm hearing some feedback, Johnny.
Yeah, let me mute up some people.
Okay. Did you own that property? Now, why am I saying did you own that property? Because I realized that they just lost the property, right? And I don't know if they know or not. You'll be surprised when you'll call on some of these potential surplus funds deals, and there's a lot of people that don't even know that they've foreclosed yet. Some of these people think they have a loan mod that got approved. Some of them think that, and this is all good information for you guys to know, some of them think that it can't happen to them. Some of them filed a bankruptcy that they thought the court approved, but it was rejected by the judge. So I always tread lightly there, and I always, I ask them, "Did you own that property?" They might say, "I did," or "I do." Okay, I was calling to see if you'd be open to looking at ways to save any possible home equity generated from the sale of this property. Again, I'm using words like could, maybe, possibly. And the reason I'm doing this, guys, again, is I'm wanting to keep this very neutral until I start getting into the question asking and until I get them to approve of me continuing forward. So when I asked this question, I was calling to see if you'd be open to looking at ways to save any possible home equity generated from the sale of this property. And if they say, "Okay, yeah, well, what do I have to do to get that?" Or "Tell me more." Okay. This is the part where you go into the transition statement. Now, I'll go over this next because this happens a lot, possible relative. So if you're talking to a possible relative, which is half of our cases are estate cases or what we call successor cases, where the person on title is actually deceased. And then you'll be kind of using a little bit of a different tweak, right? But the transition statement is going to kind of be the same. So, and I say, okay, good. And just so I understand a little bit more about the situation, so that I know if I can help, I go into situation questions. And why they call it situation questions is because I want to identify their actual current situation. I want to know where they're at physically. I want to know where they're at mentally. I kind of want to see what their vibe is, what their energy is. And these questions are going to tell me exactly that. Okay. So I'm going to go into the first question is I'm going to ask them, hey, did you make any attempts to stop the foreclosure? And the reason I'm asking that, guys, is because I want to know if they're still in this mindset of I'm going to save my house. If they are in this mindset that they want to save their house, like almost every person I speak to has this mindset, then you're going to want to tread lightly there. Okay. I think I have some questions here. How do we get the scripts? Okay, here. Let me share this with you guys right now. It's going to be in the slides, but I'm gonna drop it in here right now, guys, so you can follow along with me. Okay, got that? Cool. All right. So you'll notice some things off to the side here, right? So there's a personalized intro. So when someone says, "Who are you and what do you do?" Right? If they before you're allowed to actually get into the situation questions, these people want to grill you, right? And they want to know who the heck you are, why are you calling me? So the best way through NEPQ and through what I've used in the past, the best way to really talk about who we are and what we do is to tell them how we help other people, not to tell them how we can help them, because every salesperson is going to do that. This is how I can help you, Mr. Seller. This is how I can help you, Mr. Homeowner. We're the greatest thing since sliced bread. We're the #1 company in the world, right? Like, I've never had somebody call me that was trying to sell me something that didn't tell me that they were the #1 company at whatever they were selling, right? So we're not going to do that. So this is what I say. So you know how nowadays many homeowners are losing their homes, but yet they still have equity in the property that doesn't belong to the bank? Well, what we do is we help people like that overcome all the legal hassles that stand in the way of them getting their hands on the home equity that remains before it's turned over to the government. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So again, I'm going to go back to the question, right? I was calling to see if you'd be open and looking at possible ways of recovering the equity that was generated from that sale. You would be. Now I'm going back to the transition statement. Okay, guys. I want to know if they made any attempts to stop the foreclosure. I want to know if they're still on the property. Here's why, guys. This is a little trick, an upsell that I really don't charge for. When somebody's still on the property and they're super scared they're about to be evicted, I get this a lot from, of course, elderly people. I get this a lot from like single moms with a lot of kids. They might say, oh my God, am I going to be kicked out on the street? Am I going to live under the freeway? Like, what's going to happen? Do I have to leave tonight? So I always ask this because these are my clients and I want them to know me and trust me and feel like, hey, this is a human that I can depend on. What I do for them, if they need more time on the property, I always ask them first, are you on the property? Are you going to need more time? How much time are you going to need? I will actually call that homeowner once they sign with us, of course. I'll call that homeowner and I'll say, hey, Mr. New homeowner, Mr. Buyer, right? Mr. Cash Buyer. I've got a situation. I'm representing the tenant in your new property, and here's what's going on, right? I will often be able to negotiate on behalf of that homeowner an additional 60, 90 days. I've negotiated 6-month leases. I've negotiated 12-month leases. I've negotiated 2-month leases. I've even negotiated for some of these people to buy their property back with the surplus funds. So this is why I asked this question. So if you become more valuable to them, other than I'm just going to go after your surplus funds and cut you a check, then you're going to be the easier choice. All right. So have you taken any steps to claim the surplus funds? So if you're talking to a seasoned lead, meaning that the property has sold was sold like maybe last week, 2 weeks ago, last month, I always ask them this question because I want to know if they've taken any steps to this. And if they haven't, I want to know why not. And if they have taken steps, I want to know what they've done so far, right? They might say, I actually talked to 3 other companies and I didn't like any of them. Okay, tell me more about that. Right? So all these questions are really designed to get your prospect to open up to you emotionally. And that's the reason why we keep it very neutral at the very beginning, because I want to lower the resistance all the way to the time where it's time for me to start getting down to the nitty gritty and figuring out what their exact situation is. The next stage that we'll go into, guys, is the problem awareness. Okay. So after I've identified their situation, I like to call this next question the problem awareness question, because they might say, okay, you can do all these things, but I'm not really in a rush to make a decision today. So I'm going to ask them, Mr. Homeowner, were you aware, Mrs. Homeowner, were you aware of the limited timeline that you have to recover the home equity or the surplus funds? They might say, no, I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know that I had to file a claim. And I go into explaining that process. This is the best way that I found to explain this process, and I'll elaborate with them as well. But I'll tell them, Mrs. Homeowner, there's actually billions of unclaimed dollars that are sitting with the government right now. And this is a true story, guys. You can use this. There's billions of dollars sitting with the government right now because of the homeowner or the beneficiary, if you're talking to the heirs, they either took too long or they didn't have a proper plan in place. Okay. Now, I've highlighted some things here that I put notes in off to the side, right? So if you're feeling a little bit of pushback here, I can ask them this question: would there be anything preventing you from making sure you have a proper plan in place to save your surplus funds or to avoid getting kicked out, right? So whatever it is that that they're going to need help with, you can drop that in and fill in the blanks there. Solution awareness. So now once I've identified their situation, now they're problem aware, they know what their problem is, they know they need some legal help, they know they have a short timeline. Now I want to make them aware of the solution. So from our records, it looks as though you might be able to claim X amount of dollars, $50,000, $120,000, whatever the case is. If we're able to come in and put you in a position where you have that amount of cash, like we've done with many of our other clients, would that help you right now? Especially in a time like this? Now, what's also key, guys, is your tonality. And I'm not really going into tonality so much right now. We can do that more on a role-playing session. But your tonality is how your prospect interprets the meaning behind what you're saying. Okay, so if you say this, certain parts, were you aware of the limited timeline? That's got to be a curious tone, right? A concerned tone. So you got to be concerned. Were you aware? Right? If you were talking to your mom or dad, hey, mom, were you aware of this? Right? So, and then from our records, it looks as though you might be able to collect this much money. And then this is the curious tone, right? If we're able to help you like we've done with so many of our other clients, would that help you right now, especially in a time like this, right? I want to get them to tell me it would help them, right? Once they say, oh, absolutely. How so? Now, what am I doing here? I'm asking them the money that I'm about to recover for them. I want to know how they're going to use that money. Why do I want to know this? Because I want to know what their needs are, right? I want to know what their needs are, their desires, their pains. I want to know all these things. So now we've identified that. So if they want to wait, there's another consequence question that basically what we're trying to do here is have them understand the consequence of not making a decision and not deciding to work with us today. Have you considered the possible consequences of, and the reason I put the sort of the verbal pauses in there is because when you and I are talking on a normal conversation, if you're talking to a friend or you're talking to a relative on the phone, there's these verbal pauses, right? So I want to really make this as conversational as humanly possible, to the point where they have no idea that I have a script in front of me. Okay. So have you considered the possible consequences of not starting the process, but then you can plug in whatever their problem is. Having the new landlord want to evict you or the next couple of weeks, or losing the money to the state, or both, right? Have you considered the consequences of that? And the prospect might say, yeah, that wouldn't be good. I can't live on the streets, right? Or I got to have this money. Like, this is the only hope I have to being able to move on to the next chapter of my life. And the next question following that is, are you willing to settle for that, though? I mean, if you didn't have to, okay? This is all emotional question asking and getting them to really open up emotionally, because once you start unpacking the layers of what's really going on inside of your prospect's mind and their heart, what's really going on, what's really keeping them up at night, once you can get them to admit to what that is when you are in control of the conversation. That is when you can shine, right? That's when you can shine through and let them know, hey, I'm the person that you've been losing sleep. I'm the answer that you've been losing sleep about, right? So I'm going to continue on, additional qualifying questions, and then presenting the solution. So I imagine we're going to get into this a lot more as the days progress. I'm going to close this off here at this last part. And then, when it comes to handling objections, we can definitely get into those later on, right? I've put them off to the side here so it's not super cluttery on your script, right? So these are the top objections that I get today. So you guys don't have to actually guess what it is you have to know.
Alfred, can I ask a question?
Let's do it, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just curious because I've been wanting to ask since the retran thing this morning. What determines when the bank decides to let it go to auction as opposed to taking it back as an REO, as an asset?
Yep, good question. So the biggest thing that's going to determine that is how much debt they have on the property. So if the debt is pretty much the same as the value of the property, or even worst case, the debt is higher than the value, that's going to be an REO. Okay. Now, if the debt is lower than the value, but there's nobody bidding, there's no bidders, REO, right? So then they got their REO department, right? You know what they do? They get their REO realtors involved, and then they sell that property on the open market. But that's what happens, guys. That's a good question.
Thank you. I was curious. Thank you.
Yeah. So any other questions or feedback? I know I've been blabbing for a while.
I had a follow up to that. So if my understanding, the bank doesn't decide if it's an REO or not. It's the process they have to go through, especially in California. And if there's no bidders, or like you said, no bidders, or it's underwater, then it becomes REO. The bank just can't ultimately decide to say, I'm gonna put this in my books and not put it on the public market, correct?
No, they can't do that. Yeah, they can't do that. They have to at least they have to analyze the property as if it's going to be an auction, right? And then it's circumstance that determines whether or not that becomes. They also call it reverted to the beneficiary. So you'll see on auction results, REO is reverted to the beneficiary, right? Because you have the borrower, right, and the beneficiary is the bank. You got the borrower, who's the homeowner, and then you got the third party in the middle, the neutral party, which is the trustee. Those three parties are involved in the deed of trust. And since we are a non-judicial state, I don't want to get into too much of the weeds on that, guys. Just know that California is a non-judicial state, which means that most auctions are not governed by the court. Okay, so you don't have to go through the court proceedings in order to claim surplus. Sometimes these files do end up in court, guys, but in most cases, I would say in California, 90% of our cases stay out of court, which is a good thing for us, because once we go to court, it extends the time, right? So instead of getting paid out in 3, 4, 5 months, it can go like 6 months or more if it goes to court. I do have files in court because I work some states that only do court foreclosures, but we're only talking about California today. Okay. So, lastly, I think we will. Okay, so here's what I wanted to go over, guys. Is just the closing part, right? The presenting part. So, based on what you told me, Mr. Homeowner, what we're doing would actually work for you, because you know how you said that you plug in right here. You didn't have a legal process. You weren't aware of how to recover the funds. You also needed some help negotiating with the homeowner so you can stay in the property longer. And then you repeat back the problem. And that has been, that's going to cause you to not have funds to move on to the next location. You don't have anywhere to go yet. And because of that, it's caused you to feel, I think you said, like overwhelm and anxiety, right? The way we solve that for our clients is, and you go into describing what we do, right? So what we do is we handle the process from A to Z, which I'll go into that process now. Here, this is some of the things that you're going to want to know and things that you're going to want to ask when you're talking to potential claimants, particularly estate files, which is also called successor files. These are the things that you need to know, right? You need to gather all this information once you have a verbal agreement. Whenever there's somebody who's deceased on file, you need to know who they are, how they were related to the individual that you're speaking with. You need to have proof of entitlement. Okay, so that could include things like a marriage certificate, death certificate, birth certificate. If there's a guardianship, legal guardianship, a power of attorney, these types of documents. All signers need to have valid IDs when they sign. Probate processes, you got to kind of get familiar with probate processes, such as, if there's a will, are there letters of administration from the court? That's supposed to say from the court. From the court, is there a will? Is there a trust? If they have a will, have they started the probate process? Have they not started the probate process? Is there a trust? Who's the executor of the estate? Or who are the trustees or the beneficiaries, right? So these are some things to keep in mind. If the client does not have certain documents, you can let them know that we can order those documents for them, but the cost will be deducted from the surplus funds. Example of documents that we order often are death certificates and birth certificates. Important things to know to avoid dead deals or like dead claims is you want to know if there are any liens or judgments that could be recorded against the property other than the mortgage, right? Such as credit card debts that could be recorded against the property, child support debt, IRS, any kind of tax debt. There's certain judgments like mechanics liens, judgment liens that are on the property that could absorb some or all of the equity.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So I have a list, Brian and I have the list of people that have a surplus. So the people that we want to go after, the first step would be to get in contact with them. And then once we have a contact, then call you, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can, so are you going to hand them off for me to close it, or are you going to get the verbal agreement?
We're closers. We just need assistance on the process.
Okay, good. So if you're going to be calling them, I would use the script, give them a call, and then use the process of gathering the information about the file if it's a deceased homeowner. And then basically this is the information I need, right? From that file. So if you're going to hand off a file to me that has surplus, if you include all this information here, then I should be able to take it from there. If there's additional things that I need, I can jump in and help you guys. If somebody needs a little push to get them over the edge, certainly I can jump in and help with that.
Okay, beautiful. So we get the lead, we get all these questions answered, we send it to you, and then we split the profits, and then you pay Johnny on the back end. Got it.
Yep, ready, break. I know it's been over an hour, guys. Sorry.
You already know the process. What do you think? Everybody's in the call. Me and you will figure it out. All I can do for you, all of you guys in the community, is bring you guys more access to where you can make more money. It's up to you guys how you guys want to deal with it. Like I said, well, thank you, Alfred.